We had planned on a business meeting this morning to subpoena two sets of documents from the VA that were long-standing requests from the committee. But yesterday, VA delivered information regarding the removal of 6 SES employees for the past 2 fiscal years. This request has been made by multiple members of this committee, including myself, in multiple hearings going back to February. This morning, VA delivered the second set of documents, which I requested via letter in October of 2013. The documents cover the performance reviews for each SES individual for fiscal years 2011 and 2012. Now, although VA's response to my request and your request was delayed, their production of the requested materials is sufficient, and therefore, after consultation with the ranking member, we will no longer be having a business meeting this morning. So this morning's full hearing is entitled Review of Awarding Bonuses to Senior Executives at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And this morning, we're going to examine the outlandish bonus culture at the VA and the larger organizational crisis that seems to have developed from awarding performance awards to senior executives despite the fact that their performance fails to deliver on our promise to our veterans. As the committee's investigation into the Department continues and new allegations and cover-ups are exposed, it's important that we examine how the Department has arrived at the point where it is today. Sadly, it's a point which has eroded veterans' trust and America's confidence in VA's execution of its mission. Part of the mistrust centers on a belief that VA employees are motivated by financial incentives alone, and I can certainly see why that perception is out there. It appears as if VA's performance review system is failing the veterans that they are supposed to be serving. Instead of using bonuses as an award for outstanding work on behalf of our veterans, cash awards are seen as an entitlement and have become irrelevant to the quality work product. I know we all agree that preventable patient deaths, delays in care, and continual backlogs of disability claims, cost overruns and construction delays for VA facilities, and deliberate behavior to falsify data are not behaviors that should be rewarded. Yet, despite startling issues that continue to come to light, as well as numerous past IG and GAO reports highlighting these same issues, a majority of senior VA managers received a performance award for fiscal year 2013. According to VA's own data, over $2.8 million was paid out in performance awards to senior executives for FY13. These performance awards went to at least 65% of the senior executive workforce at the Department. In fact, not a single senior manager at VA out of 470 individuals received less than a fully successful performance review for the last fiscal year. Not one. Based on this committee's investigations, outside independent reports, and what we have learned in the last few months, I wholeheartedly disagree with VA's assessment of its senior staff. It should not be the practice of any Federal agency to issue taxpayer dollars in addition to paying 6-figure salaries to failing senior managers just because a current OPM statute for members of the SES allows that to occur. Bonuses are not an entitlement. They are a reward for exceptional work. VA's current practice only breeds a sense of entitlement and a lack of accountability, and is why we are here today. This issue, unfortunately, is not a new one for the VA. The committee has focused its oversight on bonuses for years, and if members were to go back and review the 2007 Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigation hearing on awards and bonuses, you would find that the issue we raise today were also questioned 7 years ago. There seems to be little, if any, improvement. In a May 2013 hearing, VA Construction Chief Glenn Hagstrom admitted that he could not explain why he collected almost $55,000 in performance bonuses despite overseeing failed construction plans that cost our government nearly $1.5 billion in cost overruns. In December of 2012, an investigation by this committee revealed a Legionella outbreak in the Pittsburgh healthcare system that led to at least 6 patient deaths. Nevertheless, the director there, Terry Garrick Wolf, received a perfect performance review, and the regional director, Michael Moreland, who oversaw VA's Pittsburgh operation at the time, collected a $63,000 bonus. To the average American, $63,000 is considered to be a competitive annual salary, not a bonus. The medical center director in Dayton, Ohio, received a nearly $12,000 bonus despite an open investigation into veterans' exposure to hepatitis B and C under his watch. The director at the Atlanta VA Medical Center, who oversaw multiple preventable deaths, received $65,000 in performance bonuses over his 4 years there. The former director of the VA regional office in Waco, Texas, received more than $53,000 in bonuses. While under his tenure, the Waco office average disability claims processing time multiplied to inexcusable levels. Unfortunately, I could go on and on. These are not the only instances of those charged with managing VA programs and health care facilities failing far below short of the quality that veterans and their families deserve. So in short, there are far too many examples that prove that bonuses do not ensure good performance. As we have previously heard from several witnesses in this committee, including one from VA, the quest for monetary gain rather than public service has led to data manipulation and secret lists designed to create a false impression of quality health care that is timely and responsive to veterans. This is scandalous, even criminal. I would argue that it runs far deeper than just Phoenix. Today, we'll explore the circumstances surrounding the award and eventual rescission of a performance bonus award provided to the former director of the VA Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona, Ms. Sharon Hellman. In February of 2014, Ms. Hellman was given an $8,500 bonus for her performance during fiscal year 2013. Only after allegations against Ms. Hellman came to light as a result of this committee's work did a conscientious VA employee examine whether she received a bonus in fiscal year 2013. When we questioned the award, VA determined that she was given this bonus due to an administrative error. However, past documentation from VA has stated that all performance reviews and awards are ultimately reviewed and signed by the Secretary. Furthermore, Ms. Hellman's direct supervisor, former Vision 18 Network Director Susan Bowers, stated in May that Sharon Hellman received her bonus for a highly successful rating and for improving access concerns and wait lists. Perhaps we should also question Ms. Bowers' qualifications. These stories do not match up, and I believe it further brings into question VA's transparency as well as diligence when issuing thousands of dollars in bonuses. Although Acting Secretary Gibson has rightly put a freeze on all bonuses for senior executives at VHA for the time being, it is still this committee's responsibility to understand the rationale for awarding 5-figure bonuses to individuals who have clearly fallen short of the Department's mission and their commitment to those who have served. A performance bonus award should not be received because you were able to check off a few boxes on a form. A performance award should not be an expectation. A bonus is not an entitlement. Those at the Department of Veterans Affairs are there to serve the veterans and their families. Anything less than the highest possible quality should not be rewarded. Gaming the bonus system is not the business that VA should be in. Today we'll hear what VA has to say about their performance review system, why senior managers who have overseen failure have received thousands of dollars in bonuses, and how these large performance bonuses could have led to the terrible situation that the Department is now in. With that, I now recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. I want to thank the witness for coming this morning as well. Michael LaBeouf, in his book entitled The Greatest Management Principle Ever, said, and I quote, "The things that get measured are the things that get done," end of quote. We have seen this statement borne out recently within the VA in a very negative way. As witnesses have stated in recent hearings, VA's focus on unrealistic wait time measured resulted in employees manipulating the system to make it seem like they were meeting the measured standards. LaBeouf went on to say in a later book, and I quote, "The things that get measured and rewarded are the things that get done well," end of quote. Today, we're going to look at the second piece, how VA senior executives are awarded and how the system does or does not incentivize things to get done well. Before we get into that discussion, let me also recognize that there are a lot of VA employees who do things well. As we shine the light on those who do not, let me pause for a moment and shine a brighter light, more positive light on the hard-working employees at VA who do things well. We must not forget that. And to them, I say thank you for your service and for setting an example, and hopefully all employees within the VA look at keeping their bottom line on how do we serve the veteran. With that, Mr. Chairman, I know we got votes this morning, so I'd ask the unanimous consent the remainder of my remarks be into the record. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Without objection, and members will hold opening statements. Your opening statement, should you have one, will be entered to the record at the appropriate time. Thank you for being here with us today. We have one panelist. We're going to hear from the Honorable Gina Faracy, Assistant Secretary for Human Resources and Administration at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I would ask that you would please stand, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. Your complete written statement will also be made part of the record. Thank you for being here with us this morning, Secretary Faracy, and you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Miller, Ranking Member Michaud, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee to discuss VA's Senior Executive Performance Management System. I would like to express on behalf of the VA workforce our commitment to the Department's veterans. To accomplish this mission, we must recruit and retain the best talent, many of whom require special skills in healthcare, information technology, and benefits delivery. In particular, VA requires talented senior executives to manage the complex set of VA facilities and programs. We are competing in tough public and private labor markets for skilled personnel. To remain competitive in recruiting and retaining, we must rely on tools such as incentives and awards that recognize superior performance. However, we also acknowledge that we must do a better job in holding our employees and our leaders accountable. Our senior leadership must become more engaged in managing executive performance plans to include counseling, mid-year assessments, and documentation. We realize that improvement in SES performance management also serves as a model for the General Schedule workforce performance appraisal process. The key is stringent and precise implementation and oversight of all performance plans, whether for executives or general scheduled employees. Equally important is that we have good performance training programs for executives. Performance management has many challenges. By its nature, it is very subjective and complex. It is used to identify superlative and poor performers, and it is the foundation of development and mentoring. Senior executives must understand how to craft good critical elements for their subordinates that are practical for performance management purposes. They must also fully understand the process and know how to document assessments so that decisions on poor performers will be defensible. Leaders must confidently communicate directly with the subordinate and prevail during the due process steps that follow such decisions. The VA is fortifying existing efforts to train executives on the fundamentals of performance management and how to confront poor performance. We cannot assume that our executives are skilled in these areas. Our executives must receive frequent and better training on the performance process and guidance on confronting poor performers. The data shows that VA's implementation of the SES performance process has become more rigorous over the last few years. From 2010 to 2013, the VA decreased the percentage of outstanding ratings from 35% down to 21%. We presently have an OPM-certified senior executive performance appraisal system. To receive OPM certification, agencies must demonstrate adherence to laws and policies in the evaluation of senior executives and distribution of awards. Agencies must also make meaningful distinctions in the evaluation of senior executive performance plans to receive this certification. The certification is rigorous, and failure to receive certification has significant consequences to a federal agency. As outlined in the statute, monetary awards were designed to be part of SES compensation. That is the premise of pay for performance law. Failure to recognize value and performance puts VA at risk of accelerating retirement, resignation, and/or transfer to other agencies or the private sector of some of the department's most effective senior talent. The process VA uses is described in my written testimony, but I would like to just touch on some of the high points. Most important is that the VA has uniformity in evaluating executives and has a single performance management system for both Title V and Title 38 employees. We use 5 rating levels in the VA and have published standards for these 5 ratings. Presently, VA's certified performance appraisal system goes beyond the minimum standards set by OPM. In 2011, VA added a reviewing official, which is not required as part of the rating process for most senior executives. This reviewing official is responsible for highlighting any areas of disagreement with the rating official and providing a second, more senior review. In addition, the Department formed performance review committees that conduct an initial review of appraisals prior to the review by the VA Performance Review Board. The addition of a review by the VA committees prior to the VA Board is an added feature that looks at consistency throughout the VA lines of business. We are also currently refining our policy on deferred ratings to ensure clear, concise guidance on the process, step by step. In closing, it is clear that VA must do a better job of holding our executives and employees accountable for poor performance. Good organizations establish clear standards, train employees to meet those standards, and then hold them accountable. VA cannot assume that our executives are adequately skilled in performance management, so we are taking steps to refine our training courses to address the shortfalls. In order to better serve our veterans, VA must continue to attract and retain the best and brightest leaders. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much for being here with us. You, according to your testimony from FY 2010 through 2013, not a single member of the SES, a pool of 470 individuals, received a less than fully satisfactory or successful rating. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Knowing what we know now about the fraudulent actions being taken at facilities all across this country that have harmed our veterans, do you think that the Department's assessment that 100% of senior managers at VA have been fully successful in the past 4 years is in line with reality?
Mr. Chairman, if we knew what we knew today at that time, it is unlikely that their performance would have reflected what it reflected at the time the reports were written.
Do you go back and change a performance review based on information that's gathered after the fact?
Mr. Chairman, you cannot go back and change a rating once it has been issued to an employee as the final rating.
Even if there's information that was hidden from the raters?
Even if there's information.
Is that a law or a rule?
It is a law.
It's a law that needs to be changed?
There are other ways to discipline employees for misconduct. If you find out—
Wait. You're telling me if you find out somebody does something that specifically harms veterans, is potentially criminal, that the Department's position is you would not go back and change somebody's rating if you had the ability to do that?
If we had the authority, we would use all authorities provided to us.
And so my question to you, is that something that you would recommend that this committee do, is to look into having the law changed so that you can go back and change performance reviews?
Mr. Chairman, if that was for across the Federal Government, I could agree with that.
Well, we're focused on the VA, okay? And VA ain't been doing very well lately. And I would hope that the anger and the frustration that I hear in the Acting Secretary's voice would filter through every employee, and especially in the central office. Things have to change. We can't keep doing it the way it's been being done.
I concur, Mr. Chairman.
You're aware this committee has spent considerable time looking at the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in Pittsburgh in the water system, where it has been proven that there were at least 6 preventable deaths.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
During this time period, Mr. Moreland, who was then the director of the VISN, had the responsibility of overseeing this facility and was given a one-time $63,000 bonus. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of it.
During questioning at a September 9th field hearing in Pittsburgh, then Undersecretary Petzel told this committee that it was his understanding that Secretary Shinseki did not have the authority to rescind the bonus, but that he would look into that. Are you aware of that?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Did anyone ask you about VA's authority to rescind bonuses prior to Ms. Hellman's case?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone ask the Office of General Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware.
It's safe to say that Dr. Petzel then sought his own legal counsel on the matter and then never looked at it at all?
Mr. Chairman, I would assume that he discussed this with General Counsel. General Counsel's views, when I have talked to them about rescinding bonuses, that rescinding awards based on a rating that was already given to an employee in finality is we have no authority to take the rating back nor the award, which is a result of that rating.
So how did we take Ms. Hellman's bonus back?
Ms. Hellman's bonus was erroneously released. The VA does have a standard operating procedure of any employee who has an investigation ongoing that we have been made aware of by the IG or Equal Opportunity or other venues. We put them on a deferred list. Ms. Hellman's name was on the deferred 2013 list. Her rating should not have been released. It was never definitively said that was her final rating. It was not her final rating, and because it was not final, we took the opportunity to rescind that rating. We worked with General Counsel and also OPM. It is unprecedented for that to have happened, but based on the fact that the VA has a standard operating procedure of maintaining deferred ratings, it was proven that that was not a final rating that was determined by the Secretary to be released.
Is it final now?
It is not, Chairman.
Can you explain why?
It was rescinded. Her name is still on the deferred list. Until the investigation is complete, no decision will be made on that rating.
And she still is employed by the Department of Veterans Affairs and being paid her full salary?
She is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And so you don't believe that it was extenuating circumstances, or I've forgotten what the term was that you used, that Dr. Moreland, who oversaw the VISN, that there were 6 preventable deaths, he got a $63,000 bonus, and nobody thought that was worth looking into to see if that could be rescinded?
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that. I wasn't there when that award was given.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Michaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Once again, thank you for your testimony. Sometimes my colleagues use the words like bonus, award, and performance pay interchangeably, but I understand they are different. Can you please describe to us the different categories of additional pay available to VA senior executives?
Yes, I can. There are several different kind of incentives. There are relocation, recruitment, and retention incentives that can be given in proper situations to employees. There are standards that we must meet in order to provide any of those incentives. For our health care, doctors and dentists, they receive what is called market pay and performance pay, which are in addition to a base pay. They all have different complex ways of calculation, but a normal Title V employee is not authorized for those pays. That is only for our physicians and our dentists.
The Title 38 employees.
Title 38, yes, sir.
Yep. Can you discuss the performance award bonus initiatives and the tiered pay? The
tiered pay for our awards is based on the rating. The highest rating being outstanding, and then exceeds fully successful, and then fully successful. A determination is made by the Secretary at which level he will provide awards based on the ratings. For the last 2 years, employees who received exceeds fully successful and outstanding were the employees who received awards. Those awards are calculated at different percentages. Part of the certification system by OPM requires that there be a differentiation made between levels of performance and those awards that are provided to those employees.
Okay. What's the difference between a performance award and a bonus?
We don't use the word bonus. We only use the word performance award.
So you don't, so just performance award. Who's eligible for them? When you look at this issue, and I actually just got the Chairman and I received a letter on the 19th from the Senior Executive Association, and actually what was interesting in it is partway through it says, reports proclaiming large bonuses for senior executives at the VA often fail to note that few employees on the list provided are Title V, which are SESs, that the largest, nearly all the large bonuses are for Title 38 employees. So what are the criteria you use to determine who's provided each? I mean, is it different with Title V versus Title 38?
Congressman, as far as the bonuses for Title V and Title 38, when we look at our SES performance award system, they are the same. They would fall under the same categories of outstanding, exceeds fully successful, and those percentages. What is different about Title 38 employees is, in addition to performance awards, they can receive market pay and a performance pay that is based on a separate contract if they are a health professional, if they are a physician or a dentist, with their superior at the medical center. So they have things in addition to Title V, which are not they are not a part of the performance appraisal SES system that I was speaking of.
Okay. Some of the criteria for OPM certification includes alignment, that is linking individual performance objective to organizational mission. The second is results, that is performance expectation are linked to outcomes. And number three, the overall agency performance, that is linked between individual performance objectives and overall agency performance. If VA receives OPM certification, it must have met these criteria in aggregate. How do you explain the specific failures to this committee that we have that we've discovered recently over the past several months?
Congressman, as people received awards based on their performance appraisal, those decisions were based on them meeting critical elements that were written in their performance plans and proven by metrics, the words written in their performance appraisals by their superior. That is what the Performance Review Committee and Performance Review Board saw, basically the four corners of the paper, what was written, and that's what they went by.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rowe, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me start by asking, I looked from FY 2010 to FY 2013, and you mentioned in your rating system outstanding, exceeds, fully successful. I just did the percentages, and they're unchanged. You just changed the mix a little bit, and if you add the outstanding and exceeds fully successful, in 2010 it was 73%. If you look at 2013, it's 78%. It actually went up. So that means there's an expectation, and it's varied between 75 and 73. So you really didn't change anything other than the very top rating, so that the bonus or performance award or whatever you want to call it went down just a little bit. So fully 80% of people last year got an award and were exceptional out of the 470. Do you think that that's normal in business, that every single executive is exceptional?
Congressman, I can't answer that question about business.
Well, I mean, the awards here seem to say that. I mean, if you look at your own data, I'm not making this up. This is your data I'm looking at.
Congressman, I understand. Based on the critical elements in the performance plan for those SESs and the results that were on those plans, that is what was.
Well, that means that you put the bar down here then, so that anybody could step over it. If your metrics are low enough that almost everybody exceeds them, then your metrics are not very high.
Congressman, that is something we should look at. Every performance plan is written for the fully successful level, and if they exceed that.
Okay, I got that. What I want to also understand is I've asked this question for the last 5 or 6 hearings, is that to get a bonus or a performance award, whatever you want to call that, is not sending veterans to the outside, to private care, is that part of the metric? And no one has answered that question. Is it yes or no?
Congressman, I don't know, and I'll take that for the record.
Okay, thank you for that. You mentioned, at least it's in the evaluations that you have, the elements outlined as leading change, leading people, business acumen, building coalitions, and results driven. Those are the metrics that you go by. What are the specifics in there? I mean, how are they set up? That's fine. I mean, all that sounds good. But what do you actually have to do to get a $10,000 or in some cases $60,000 bonus?
Congressman, in each of the performance plans, there is a template that goes out that says the guidance for the strategy of VA and what the employees must do to tie their organization and individual performance to the strategies of VA. That is how it is determined. And if they exceed, there are different critical elements.
And who decides that?
It starts with the Secretary, who will put out VA's strategy plan and guidance, and then it is given to the administrations. They put additional metrics into their template.
Okay, let me ask you this question. If you knowingly cooked the books, it's apparently what happened in Arizona, because if you do that with the IRS, let me give you an example. If you falsely put your claim out with the IRS and claim deductions you don't have, let me tell you what's going to happen to you. You're going to get penalized, you're going to pay the taxes, and you might go to jail. Do you think that should happen to people who fraudulently put out information that led to the deaths of people, a lot worse than not paying your taxes? Do you think that should be part of what we should be doing here today, to look at people who absolutely gamed the system so that they could make some extra money and veterans didn't get care? Because that's what will happen to you in other government agencies.
Congressman, I believe when these investigations are complete that the Acting Secretary will ensure there will be accountability for those actions.
That's not an answer. I mean, my answer is somebody accountability to what? What does that mean? The question I ask is, right now today in the IRS, you know this, if you and I put something down wrong and we're audited, you know what's going to happen. We're going to pay back taxes, we're going to pay penalties, and we might go to jail if it's really bad. So the question I have is should that metric, that same standard, apply to people who are in the VA who've fraudulently done this, if they have?
If given that authority, I am sure it would be used, Congressman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Takano, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Farrisee, can you tell me how many employees under Title V, and Title V is what we're talking about, the Title V employees who were involved in the bonus system. I know there's Title 38, but the Title V employees are the ones who were in charge of managing and responsible for the scheduling. How many employees received bonuses?
Across the complete VA or only SES?
Give me the SES number first.
Who actually received, about 78% of the SES, but that includes Title V and Title 38.
Okay.
And there are Title V and Title 38 employees at the medical centers.
Okay. But with regard to the accountability for the gaming of the system, I'm trying to get a handle on how many employees are sort of accountable for that. I mean, I'm thinking the Title 38 are the providers that, you know, the medical practitioners that for other reasons are getting pay beyond their base pay, right?
Correct, but it is possible there are some Title 38 employees involved in the scheduling as well.
Okay, but just give me an idea of how many employees were involved.
Involved overall, I don't have that number, but I'll take it for the record.
Okay.
The IG has not completed their investigation, so we really probably do not have the final number right now.
Well, how much of the, I mean, we've talked somewhat about how the incentives maybe should be based on outcomes rather than these metrics, but I'm trying to get a handle on why the metrics, we lost control of them. And I've heard testimony that had to do with the technology, that we didn't have we had a scheduling system that was easy to game. Is that your assessment too?
I don't know enough about the scheduling system to make that assessment.
Okay. Well, because I'm just wondering if the number of employees that were involved just made it very difficult for anyone to look at how people were scheduled, how veterans were scheduled, and if there's a lot of employees, I can imagine that the scheduling component of the VISTA system apparently was vulnerable to this sort of gaming. But this is not your expertise.
Unfortunately, it is not, Congressman.
Well, what other incentives could the VA use to recruit and retain healthcare providers beyond bonuses and performance pay?
We have recruiting incentives, relocation, retention incentives once they are on board. We have authorities from OPM to give those type of incentives for hiring difficult-to-fill positions, difficult locations sometimes, and skills.
Well, we know that the VA loses healthcare providers to the DoD. Why hasn't the VA considered increasing the base pay of the VA healthcare employees so that they receive comparable pay to the DoD?
I am not aware that it's not comparable pay to DoD. I'll have to look at that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks. I
Congressman.
want to know if that's true. Has the VA considered offering other incentives such as loan repayment or increased pay for VA providers willing to work in rural and underserved areas?
We have not looked at that, Congressman.
Well, that's interesting. So, my understanding is the rural areas and underserved areas. Is this typically? Well, we don't know enough about the investigation to know how this gaming of the system sort of matches up. Whether we're seeing the manipulation of wait times sort of be more prevalent in these underserved or rural areas. What additional professional opportunities could the VA offer its healthcare providers to recruit and retain those who are dedicated to serving veterans?
I think we are doing things like market pay, which gives them an additional pay to the base pay, the performance pay, the contracts that they do with their individual superiors. All of that gives them additional pay for us to try to meet the external payments. We'll never meet it, but we do try to make it more attractive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Takano. Mr. Runyon, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just really two observations, and I want to say there's probably not a lot of people, and the basis of what all these discussions we're having, I don't think there's a lot of people on this committee that really have much faith in a lot of the metrics that we use VA-wide. Because I know we all go to, whether it's our health centers or our regional offices, and are totally confused by any metric they throw at us. And to be able to award performance awards off of those type of metrics are mind-numbing to me. And to go back to what Dr. Rowe really said, and I think you testified to it, you're setting out a template, the Secretary is setting out a template. How low is that bar really? obviously, in my past career, we have performance incentives all the time. We had several tiers of it. We would have two categories, would be likely to be earned and unlikely to be earned, and it would actually count against the salary cap of that team. It wasn't either all in or all out. There were tiers to it. But I just want to and I'll end here and then really don't have a question. I just want to say to be able to have something, you're going to set a bar that low and not be able to really truly measure it. You know, incentives are great, and I don't think anybody here would agree that uniformly across the VA that they're being applied equally. And you've said it too, it's very subjective. The basis of it is getting the facts. And I think we're so far away from that at this point. I really don't even have a question for you, because until we fix that, having the discussion about performance incentives, you can't even have the discussion because there's no basis of fact to have it on. So with that, I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Custer. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony before us today. I'm feeling like we're experiencing what they would call in the academic world grade inflation, or what Garrison Keillor would refer to as all of the children are above average. Coming from the private sector, it's hard for me to believe that 80% of employees can be either outstanding or this other category that is above and beyond what the expectation is. And it makes me feel like the expectation is lowered to a place that doesn't serve our veterans the way we had wished. But I want to focus in on where we go from here and how we can fix this problem, because obviously this is a bipartisan issue. We are all concerned. Fortunately, this is one of the few bipartisan committees where we can work together and make a difference. My concern lies in how we can fix this situation, or help the VA to fix this situation, because it doesn't appear that the policies provide for a methodology to make this kind of change. And by that, what I mean is that we have had some oversight, but at the end of the day, it doesn't seem to change. And I'm just want to make reference to the VHA is unable to assure that although they identify problems, that the problems will be corrected and do not recur. This is a review of one medical center a year later found the identical problems, that you don't end up with a change. And I want to focus in on, is there ever an opportunity in the system that we have now where 80% of the people get enhanced pay? Is there ever an opportunity for reduction or denial of this enhanced pay? And just moving forward, now that we know what we do know, what will be the consequences to people that, frankly, were lying and cheating and stealing both veterans' health care and taxpayers' hard-earned dollars?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for that question. I do believe there's room for change. Part of that change will come with more training of our senior executives, them understanding our critical elements that are put in the performance plans, and establishing very real goals and the metrics we have talked about, and ensuring that our metrics are not too low, that in fact you must perform to reach that exceeds and that outstanding rating. that we pay much more attention. We have now automated the system of the performance appraisal system. I personally could not see them until they came into hard copy previously. This is the first year it's an automated system. We'll have a chance to look at all the metrics in advance. We will do a lot more training with our senior executives on what these critical elements mean and how our performance review committees and performance review boards need to view these metrics. I am certain.
And what about lack of performance? Can someone lose their job? Can they get docked pay? Is there any capacity in this system to take action when performance is less than stellar, which apparently it is for 80% of the people?
Yes, Congressman, there is absolutely a process to do that. You can.
What does that entail? How someone would get fired?
It entails proposal of removal. If we are talking about removing somebody from the federal government, that employee would have a right to respond. They get a 30-day notice period. Then they can respond orally, say if there's any mitigating circumstances. That paper then goes to the deciding official who would take into consideration what the employee says, and then a decision maker will make within 30 days a decision on the personal action to happen. Depending on what the evidence is for what the employee has done wrong, there is a range of things you can do to an employee.
Well, can I ask you, would criminal conduct be evidence of lack of performance?
It would be misconduct.
And
so
would misconduct be sufficient for someone to lose their position?
If the evidence proves that through an investigation, yes, that is possible.
And how about lying to the extent that it wasn't a crime, but it was certainly harmful to veterans being able to get access to care?
There is certainly a range of punishment, and depending on all of the details of that, it is possible they could be proposed for removal, depending again on the evidence and the details.
Thank you very much. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very much. Dr. Benishek, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Ms. Farrisee. Dr. Petzel testified in February of this year in the Subcommittee on Health that 6 SES employees had been involuntarily removed in the last 2 years. However, we've tried to get the information as to what the details are of that. We haven't gotten that. Are you aware of this?
Congressman, you did receive that yesterday. I know it just came yesterday, but the committee did receive that from the VA yesterday.
Okay. So if that's correct, that 6 people were removed and not a single person in the SES received less than a satisfactory rating, how did that removal take place?
Removals, once they were removed, they did not receive a rating, so they would not show up in having received a less than satisfactory rating. So when you see numbers that show no unsatisfactory ratings, it's a little misleading because those employees then did not get followed up with a rating because
so you're telling me that there is actually unsatisfactory ratings, but they're just not listed?
Congressman, once somebody departs, they do not receive that rating.
That's not accurately depicting what's really going on.
That is
I'm
true,
kind of
Congressman.
concerned, too. Let me ask you this question. This is from my briefing here. An SES employee works with their supervisor to create a performance review plan for each fiscal year. And then they rate their own performance on each critical element at the end of each fiscal year.
Yes, Congressman, and then
So that's then reviewed by their direct supervisor.
by the direct supervisor, the rating official, and then a review.
So they rate themselves.
They put down all their accomplishments.
Right,
and
but they
then-
rate themselves according to this, right? So, and then that process is reviewed by their direct supervisor.
It is, and then a
And that's
superior above that.
then approved or disapproved by that direct supervisor.
Correct. Then
So
the,
the direct supervisor doesn't actually write the performance review themselves, the actual employee writes the performance review, and the supervisor just okays it or just allows it. Is that what happens?
the portion on the appraisal, there is a self-assessment on there that is optional. So the employee can put a self-assessment in there. But the
Does that
rating...
usually occur?
I'm sorry.
Does that usually occur?
In some of the ratings, not all of them.
Have you ever been involved in this process personally?
I am just being involved in it since I've arrived at the VA personally. I've just finished doing my own SES appraisal plan. We are at the point of turning in our plans right now.
How long have you been with I guess I don't know this. How long have you been there?
Since September in this role.
So you haven't been a direct supervisor to anyone that's done their own plan yourself?
I'm just doing that now.
You're doing your own plan, but are
And
you
my-
actually a direct supervisor?
I am, and my deputy has provided to me his plan. We are not to the point of writing the final appraisal yet.
You think this is a good idea that the employee themselves writes their own plan?
Well,
I mean,
before,
it seems to me that that would lead to an 80% percentage of people getting good results.
Congressman, I understand. But before that plan is written, there is discussion with the ratee and the rater. They don't just go off and write a plan without some sort of discussion of what's reasonable and what should be considered exceptional.
That's what you say, but the process seems to indicate that the guy writes his own plan. If I do this, this, and this over the next year, I'll be successful. Then he accomplishes that even better, and then he gets a superior rating. You know, I mean, this whole, I mean, the questions that have been previously brought up here in the committee, you know, tend to think that there's not a real rating going on here. It's just everybody's getting a good rating. And, you know, I'm very concerned with the fact that people are writing their own review plan, and it just gets checked by their supervisor, and then the numbers that you present to us aren't accurate, and 0%, and there's 6 people removed, and there's inconsistencies in your testimony, and the testimony of Dr. Petzel and I. It's very disturbing to me that here we are in the middle of trying to reform the VA, and we get inconsistent answers, and it makes us not want to trust anything that comes from you people.
Mr. Congressman, the numbers that we provided as far as the ratings are when there is actually an appraisal plan. We did not do those on the individuals who departed. That's why they don't show up in the numbers.
Well, it's very disappointing to me to, you know, to get these answers from you two today. I think I'm out of time.
Thank you, Dr. Benishek. Ma'am, you said that the self-evaluation or senior executive self-assessment is optional. Are you sure it's optional?
As part of that plan, there is...
I'm looking at the performance appraisal form, senior executive performance appraisal form.
The 3482?
Yes, 3482.
And there are rating official narrative that is...
I guess what I'm looking, the only place I see that's optional is if the person is asking for a higher level review for their pay, or it's optional to put a letter of input. But the other two sections, Section 3, senior executive self-assessment, does not appear to be optional. Form 3482, Section 3, Senior Executive Self-Assessment. Describe your accomplishments, outcomes, and results. I think you just told Dr. Benishek that was optional. Is it?
I'm going to take that back and say I may have misspoken. Can I get back with you on this, Chairman?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brownlee, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Farisi. So now I understand you've been in this position for a short period of time. Were you in human resources with the VA prior to?
I was not. I retired from the Army.
Thank you. So it's been widely reported in newspapers that a regional director in Pittsburgh, I think, received a performance pay award of $62,000. You're aware of that?
I am aware of that.
So I'm just trying to do the calculations here, and I will add $62,000. The median income in the county that I represent is $76,000. So I just want to state that for the record. But so if this employee received $62,000 in a bonus, and in your testimony, you said that the performance pay cannot exceed 20% of the base salary for an SES employee. Then, if you do the math on that, then the base salary is over $300,000.
Yes, Congresswoman, that award was because of a presidential rank award.
And what's special about that?
Very few of those are given each year, and
So that doesn't follow any of the rules that we have been talking about?
And it's not an award given by the VA.
I see. So I know this hearing is about performance pay, but there is also a retention incentive pay.
Yes, Congresswoman.
And so the process for awarding retention incentives, I presume, differ from performance pay incentives. And so do you have the information on what percentage of SES employees receive retention incentives last year? Can they receive both retention pay and performance pay?
They can receive both, Congresswoman. We currently have 40 SESs out of the 470-some SESs who receive retention incentives.
And is there a cannot exceed percent for retention pay?
There is. It's
And what is that?
25% of their salary per year, and it can be